bit, and I kind of want to start at one at a time. So let's go and get started. So the agenda for today, we're going to do introductions for who we are. We're going to talk about the general game strategies we saw at Scrimmage. We're going to talk about what improvements we think we're going to see after Scrimmage. We're going to talk about all the penalties that happened at Scrimmage because there were a ton. And then we're going to have an open discussion to just kind of chat about Scrimmage and how we think it went and what we think we'll see differently at comps.
Okay, I'll start off with introductions. So my name is Kate. I'm from team 19376 from Equilibrium, and this is going to be my 5th year of FTC. And I mainly do mechanical design on my team. And also the other person, Ben, he's not here yet, but he's also the co-captain on my team.
I guess I'm next. I'm Davey. I'm the co-captain and design lead on 16461. This is my 3rd year of FTC, and as I said, I mainly do our design and mechanical.
Howdy, I'm Philip from team 6272 Quantum Quacks. This is my 3rd year of FTC, and I am, words are weird on Quantum Quacks, but the equivalent would be captain and software head on Quantum Quacks.
Hi, I'm Timothy. I'm from 5064 Aperture Science. This is my 3rd year of FTC, and I primarily do mechanical and design stuff. Okay, so just starting out with like the general strategy. So one of the strategies we saw not in elimination matches was one partner cycling on the near side. So like if they're on a warehouse, and like if you're on the red side, like cycling on the right of the field in this image, and another cycling in the far one. And this allows two things. So it allows your faster cycling bot to basically not have people be in their way. So they can get whatever freight they want. They can like basically drive unimpeded. And then it also allows your other robot to play defense and while still scoring. So we saw this with like Family Equilibrium, where they could like get in other people's way and like interact with other robots, but they could still like score in the high goal. Not the high goal, sorry, the Alliance specific hub. And going into that, we saw a ton of robot interaction. So either through just like one team cycling in the far warehouse and like interacting with the other alliance, or just like teams just piking in the gap trying to stop people from scoring. This year, probably greater than any year we've seen in North Carolina in person, in my memory, has had a ton of interaction between these different robots. And lots of defense going on, which you have to be careful with penalties, which we'll get into later. And then the one other strategy we saw, which again is just like trying to get robots out of each other's way, because if there's two robots going to the same location, it gets pretty cramped pretty quickly, is having one cycle the Alliance specific hub and one cycle the shared Alliance hub, which I don't think we saw a ton of at Scrimmage, but I think we'll definitely see more of that in the future.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see, considering this is the first in-person year we've had since Skystone.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. One thing as well was we saw a lot more defense in the limbs rather than quals, because in quals, most teams are focusing on getting lots of points to get their ranking up there for Alliance selection, but once you're in the limbs, it doesn't matter as much about your points. It's really just who wins the matches. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. There's a lot more defense in limitations than quals.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, go ahead, Philip.
something that has tripped up some people at the Scrimmage anyway was that ranking points are not based off of win-loss like they have been in the past. Ranking points are based off of the total points that your alliance scores. So defense in quals didn't really happen that much. It was all about trying to get as many points as you could. But then when we got to a limbs, we saw that massively flip, because the limbs is all about win-loss.
Yeah.
So defense becomes a huge thing.
Yeah, I think going along with that, I think it really makes sense for there to be two like separate strategies in this game. Because like you guys have been saying, in limbs, like the best thing for your team is to just score as much as you can. And I mean, sorry, in quals, the best thing to do is just score as much as you can. And then in limbs, it goes back to like a plus or minus thing, which I think also makes like the shared hub a lot more valuable in elimination matches than in qualifying matches. Because the shared hub, you get 20 points for tipping it in qual matches, and that's it. But in limbs, it's effectively a 40-point swing, which is quite significant.
Yeah, and if you're really looking at defense, to my knowledge, in the past couple of years, that finals 2 match of scrimmage was probably the most physical match in NC in a very long time. So teams should be really preparing robust robots, because like during that, we had tens of robot collisions. We had robots ramming each other into hubs. We had people getting pushed up on barriers. We had one robot on top of another robot at one point. And there was just a lot of general interaction. Like at one point, we had all 4 robots in a 2x2 area. So it's something to really keep in mind when you're looking at improving your robot for qualifiers. Go for making it robust, because you don't want to get hit in elims.
And I don't think that's exactly going to go away.
And
by
that
Loctite.
Yeah, and the more important thing is we hit that most physical match standpoint at this early in the season. As the season progresses, it's probably going to get worse.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think there was quite a bit of defense in that match in particular, because 2 of the robots.
It's all because of MTI. It's all because of MTI.
One of the robots had their claw broken, so they couldn't really do anything but defense. But I do think we even saw like a team that was really good at scoring throughout in thermal equilibrium. They were playing defense in finals. So I think, and like Davey's alluding to, shout out Black Forest Robotics. For those of you who did not watch the Maryland Tech Invitational last year, if you want to get a masterclass in defense, go watch some of those matches on YouTube. Shout out.
And then
it was
half
pretty
of what they did,
as someone who was
half
there.
of what they did is going to get penalized.
Half of what they did was illegal, but whatever. It was really fun. But just in general, defense in FTC is being a bigger thing this year. But I think we're gonna, once you get to those elimination matches and like higher level competitions, I think you're definitely gonna see a lot of defense. So be prepared for that, strategize about it, and then also be like, make your robot not break if another one touches it.
Yeah, last thing for strategy really was shared hub, as Timothy mentioned. There wasn't really much at the scrimmage, because scoring a shared hub is really quite difficult. It's a really difficult area on the field to like maneuver your robot around, but I think we'll probably see a lot more of that in quals with people focusing on shared, because it's a huge points thing right there.
In reference to chat, Kaval, you played no illegal defense in any of those rounds.
We think.
So the big things about defense, we're going to talk about them later. Just don't pin for 5 seconds and don't completely block someone from an area.
So
however,
don't be egregious. Don't be egregious is the big thing, because technically
and don't cause
can
someone else's robot to force to break a rule.
Yeah, don't be annoying. Basically,
if you force a penalty, even if it's accidental, then that's not. Anyway, we're getting into penalties. So coordinating autos, and we have a fun video here of the turtles collision that was not coordinated. Let's watch that again just for gorgeousness. But
this is my favorite.
Davey, avert your eyes.
I don't know how our lift didn't snap. I legitimately don't know how our lift didn't snap.
But so yeah,
don't do that.
Yeah, and we're about to talk about safe auto paths. And so following those to make sure that you don't have something like that happen is a good idea. Who's talking about safe auto paths?
I am, I think.
Davey is.
Okay, so one of the things you really want to check with your alliance partners before qual match, especially qual matches, elims matches is a lot easier because you have the same 2 partners for a couple matches. But for qual matches, you want to coordinate with your partners well in advance to make sure that your auto paths are compatible. The general way to do that would be just go run a practice match, see if your autos collide, make sure that they're completely compatible with each other. Sometimes you just don't have time to do that. And we learned that with 2827. The reason that we actually had that collision was because they had a match and then immediately had to queue for their match with us. So we had 0 time to go run a practice match. So this is something put out by Reese from 5064. This is a general auto path guideline. So generally, if you're doing a cycling auto and you're actually going into the warehouse and picking up cubes and then bringing them back to score, you want to stay in this top half of the field, this lightly shaded area. and you don't want to cross into that bottom half of the field because you're going to interfere with not the opposing alliance's bot, your alliance partner's robot. On this bottom half of the field, you do want to stay there, and it's only in very rare occasions where you've actually coordinated with the team that's with you that you would want to try and even park in warehouse. In general, it's going to be advisable to park in that little square, the storage unit, depot, whatever your team calls it. In general, if you're on that bottom side of the field and you're running auto, it's advisable to park there unless you have a lot of coordination, because it is just a lot easier to get out of the way, and it is 10 points for a full warehouse park, 6 points for a storage unit park. It's really not that much of a trade-off. Like, if you miss your warehouse park by an inch, it's less points than the storage unit park. So I would recommend checking this out. I think it's posted somewhere on NCFTC Discord. It's posted on the national FTC Discord, pinned in General Robotics. It's just generally good to follow paths like this to make sure that you don't have catastrophic collisions happen in qualifiers. It was a pretty bad collision between 16461 and 2827. It was very lucky that nothing broke on either of those bots. It could have been a lot worse. So we don't want that happening to any teams during quals or elims in future competitions. So just make sure that you're coordinating with teams and making sure that your auto's compatible. Like, if you are willing to be public about your robot, post an auto bid in NCFTC Discord or on the coaches forum. People can give you feedback on whether it's compatible with other people's. Just make sure that you're planning for compatibility, because that's something we didn't have to do last year, and it's a big issue this year.
Yeah.
It's pinned in Students General and
Is it?
NCFTC, by the way.
Okay.
But
I was going to do that. But cool.
yeah.
It's in here already? Yeah, it is. Cool.
So, anyways, I definitely agree with Davey. This is, again, just like a basic guideline. If you want to do something extra, do something extra. But being compatible is honestly the most important thing in auto, because it's probably better to run an auto that gets you less points if you don't hit your partner, because there's very few robots that can hit their partner and then not have everything mess up.
I don't think there's any unless you have T265 or something working.
Even if you have like really good odometry, stuff can still mess up. But so be careful.
And in general, have a compatible auto even if you do want to have an extra auto. So you could have an auto that does everything on the field, but you should also have a compatible auto so that when you get to elims, it doesn't become a problem.
And as Keval said, yes, scoring ducks with Mecanum wheels is possible if you do have a flip like that. That was an incredible
that was great thinking on 2827's part.
So,
it was.
My name hasn't changed, but yeah, that's all my driver. Like, we were kind of sitting there, and he's messing around with the controller. She's like, "Hey, look, I can move the robot," and I was like, "Hey, why don't you try and get over there?" But yeah, that was definitely, I'm glad that happened in a scrimmage and not in like a qual. But that was a good lesson in trying to path autos. Unfortunately, my team had a match 2 matches before that, so that's why we didn't have time. But I think my team learned a valuable lesson in especially my code team, in like where to put the robot in auto, because we realized all of our autos had the robot going not only like right next to the duck in it, but also they would go into the warehouse. So hopefully other teams also took note of that.
So just in general, don't run an auto. Like, if you aren't if you think it could hit your partner, just don't run the auto. Just in general, I think is good life advice, because there's times when you're not going to be able to practice, and if that happens, hitting your partner is not fun. So just choose the auto that scores more points and just be like, sad we won't get as many points this round.
-160 from that auto, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous.
I think that might have been the world record for most penalties in a match, to my knowledge.
At least in auto, that was pretty impressive. But yeah, that was a lot of good lessons were learned. So I'm just honestly glad that happened then instead of like later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so post-scrimmage improvements, back to the auto. I'm sure we'll see a lot more tuning done of autos, hopefully some less issues of teams running into each other and all of that. But some other things, I think a big thing we're going to see is capping. I think we had one team that actually attempted to cap out of the 16 teams at the scrimmage, and captains are huge for points. Is it 10 or 15 per cap on the alliance?
15 per
15.
cap, so that's like 3 cycles.
Like 3 cycles just to get your capstone on top of the hub. So I think that's a big thing we're going to see people do. It's kind of a more complicated aspect of this game, but I think it's something people are going to put some more time into and get that done by qual. So we'll probably see some of that. Also, even just having a team shipping element and using that to sense in auto rather than the duck. Not everyone was doing that, but that's another 10 points you can get pretty easily. So I think we'll see people doing that as well. And also back to the shared hub, we already talked about this a little bit, but not too many teams were doing it at the scrim because it's just kind of difficult to maneuver and get your robot in the area. But I think we're going to see a lot more teams focusing on that at quals as well, because again, huge points, 20 for getting your hub tipped towards your alliance. So I think that's a lot of the big improvements we're going to see and that teams are probably working towards right now to get all done and good to go for quals.
Intaking capabilities are another, like in terms of how many you can intake.
Yeah.
So
That'll be another.
not to hype on compatibility too much, but Iron Rain, an FTC team in Texas, put out an open capstone design. You don't have to use their capstone, but I would recommend that it's at least compatible with theirs, just so that, because that's a design that that's a
They got
design a lot
that
of people
out in like the
use.
first week of the season, and so many teams are using it just as a standard.
So
Yep.
even
it's
if you
good to
don't,
look at.
even if you don't use it, at least be sure that you can do that, because you can double cap in this game.
Yeah,
which
you
is
can
nice.
cap your team member's capstone.
Yep,
That
and
is an important thing to remember.
30 points between the two of them. We've been playing with the Iron Rain one as well, and it's working great. I definitely recommend it.
We're swapping to Iron Rain before quals.
Yep. Okay, I think we could move on. Okay, so penalties. We've already mentioned this quite a bit. Between our teams, we managed to get over 800 penalties at the scrimmage, which is a very large number. Yeah, so penalties are a big thing this year. There are a lot of different aspects of the game you could get penalties from, and I think we're going to talk about all that a bit more. We have some clips kind of showing how we all screwed up and some things that we're going to try to avoid doing at qualifiers.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get right into that. Yeah, so this one isn't actually a penalty. This is just kind of a mess up we wanted to mention to keep teams aware of. Basically, the robot got stuck on the train. The train is a big thing this year, and it is difficult to get around. So
We fixed that before finals. I swear. Timo literally put parts on our robot.
Welcome,
yeah,
King.
so getting stuck on the train is difficult this year. This was Thermal and Turtles, and we managed to go over there and bump them out. But that's still another thing to keep in mind for improvements for quals. Try to make sure you can't get stuck on that train.
Yeah. I don't know why we're still watching this. This is really long. But important part of that clip.
Yeah, basically, try not to get stuck on the train.
What?
Yeah, Thermal was like
Who's got the
30
clip of the
pounds
ref
and
spinning
strong.
with our robot as we try and get unstuck in qual.
Thermal was
14.
like 30 pounds and strong, so Turtles was pretty lucky that they had a partner like that. So just don't get stuck on the train, because you might not always have Kate to help you out.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's some actual penalties. Okay, this was a big one. This was like one of the most dramatic moments of the day, probably. This was our team. During autonomous, we managed to knock over the Alliance hub.
I didn't even see this clip yet.
Yeah. So that
I
is
love how you just see the disappointment in Benji's face.
yeah. So that is a
Eileen's not sure what to think there.
we did manage to flip it back over at the beginning of teleop, which we were very excited about. But this just kind of shows like how crucial it is to spend time tuning your autonomous programs and making sure that does not happen, because flip hub is a big thing that can hurt you.
Notable rule with this: if you see your refs penalize you for trying to write it back up, call them out on it. There's a forum ruling that says if you have your hub fall over, you're allowed to try and write it without any penalties.
Yep.
As long as you don't grasp it.
As long as you don't grasp it, which would be if grasping is basically they need to be able to pull the hub away from your robot if you stop it at any point. That's just basically the rules of grasping.
In the chat, if that happens, is it field damage? If you just knock it over, it's not field damage. If you were to like break the hub or something, then it would be field damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
Don't
just
do
knocked
that.
it over, so it wasn't.
If it's field damage, that becomes a card, not a penalty.
Yeah,
Which is
I don't think you get penalties
bad.
for field damage.
Yeah.
Yellow card. For
We're
people
the
that
second team in NC history to get a red card.
cough, purple goes, cough. Yeah, and then something that what was it? I was gonna say something about the forum ruling. Oh yeah, question 46. If you're a person like me who only remembers things because of numbers, and you have a number attached to everything to be able to remember it, it is question response 46 that you can write a shared tipped shipping hub.
Yeah, it just has to be back to the general area, and
Yeah, it can't be for like strategical advantage or something.
okay.
Why does it keep trying to replay this clip? There we go.
Okay.
All of these
I'm
clips
sorry,
are
you guys did the
thermal.
shared too?
Okay, so no, this is Quacks.
Oh.
So wait, hold on. Let's replay that. So for this one, we decided that we were going to try a strategy where Quacks would cycle into the shared hub, and Thermal would cycle into the Alliance specific one. However, if you watch the Quacks, we had no driver practice and a very bad control scheme, and it kind of shows. So yeah, that's the penalty. And then we go over the barriers, or try to go over the barriers, and then we eventually just plow the team. I know, no driver practice before scrimmage. That's something the teams. But so yeah, we kind of got stuck here, and then we just decided to yeet it, and
That's
then
also
we hit the
bad.
hub.
Yep. There we
Don't
go.
do that either.
There
That
we go.
one is hard.
And then
to
we
avoid.
got stuck again. And we got free, and then we got stuck again.
Yeah.
Philip, if
that one is
if I
quite-
send you a Discord image link, could you pull it up by chance?
Yeah.
The shared hub is quite hard to avoid moving because it's just such a small area to rake
Okay,
in. So you have to be really careful about
Philip
that.
just pull
Yeah.
up that link.
So be careful, please.
Yeah, so this is an instance of what can happen if things really mess up.
That's from Washington.
Welcome to
Definitely
the
don't
first
do that.
Washington scrimmage. There is a robot flipped in the background. Neither hub is in its starting location. The shared hub isn't even in the neutral zone anymore. Let's
Don't do
not
that.
have any fields look like this by the end of the match.
Hey, we avoided doing that, guys, as a state. So good job, guys. Good job,
NC
squad.
strong.
That's hashtag NC strong. Okay, we can move on.
It doesn't like. There we go.
Okay, so this is a big one. A lot of teams at the scrimmage were focusing on doing ducks, which is great, but you only get points for ducks if you deliver them in a specific way, and a lot of that has to do with your human player. So first thing, it has to be touching the metal bar when you start off, which you just don't get points if you don't do that. So do that, or you will lose a lot of points. It also has to hit the metal bar when it comes off, which means you have to have the right speed, because if you spin it too fast, then the ducks will just start flying off. So that's something you should definitely test beforehand. Another thing, you had, for the first duck to count, you had to start touching the carousel after endgame started. So a lot of teams were heading over to the duck spinner or the carousel to like start right away, which is great, but you have to be sure you're not in contact with it till you hear that buzzer. And then metal plate. So just putting it in the right part of the carousel is a big deal. If you put it too far out, it's a lot easier for it to fly out. But if you put it in the middle, I think it slows it down some. So that's again something you have to experiment with your own robot. And then one other thing I saw that I thought was really good was a lot of teams were having like the person placing the ducks like calling out to their driver as they were going, and that just makes it a lot easier on everyone. So I think like Thin Equilibrium was doing that. You probably can't hear it in the clip, but like he'd yell like stop when he saw that the duck fell off. He'd put a duck on and then he'd yell start again, just to make sure that you aren't putting it on while it's moving, because that's a big penalty. But also to be sure that they're starting as soon as they can. So it's very efficient.
Yeah,
Two other penalties. Oh,
we had a few penalties with the ducks in the beginning of the day in quals, and we started doing the call outs as Timothy just mentioned by limbs and all that stuff, and it was working great. So definitely just like having communication between your human player and the driver helps so much. It's such a simple thing to do. Just everyone should try doing that.
so something else you can do that I think Quacks is going to do is you can put your duck spinning on the second controller and hand that to the person in charge of ducks, and so there's no communication there. It's just all them. And
Is that
I think it was
is that
mostly
allowed?
yeah, that's a lot.
Oh,
It
that's
is
sick.
allowed. I think it was the penalties that were most called were probably, it's not a penalty, but it just doesn't count. But the ducks not being in contact with the metal bar to start, and then placing them on the carousel while it's
The
still moving.
most called penalty would be either double possession or moving your alliance shipping hub.
Probably
I
double, or maybe it was maybe something with ducks. I don't know. Yeah, so duck penalties, the biggest one was putting it on while moving, but a lot of people lost points because they weren't putting it on the metal to begin with, or
Yeah.
it was flying off before it hit the metal piece.
Yeah.
Two other big penalties that we saw with ducks at scrimmage. You're only allowed to touch the rim of the thing. So if you go a little bit too fast and you pop up underneath it, you can't spin it from there. You need to back out, come back in it again. And then also make sure your teams know, and especially human players on your teams. That's not what it's called, but whoever's placing the ducks, the rules about when you can and can't. A big one, you can't put up for in game. Especially which was a big penalty that Quacks got. No, stop. There we go.
Okay, so then another penalty we saw a lot was knocking freight out of warehouse. So this was intended to like stop teams from like throwing the freight out of the warehouse for their partner to grab and cycle really quickly. But it also applies if it's not intentional. So you have to be really careful about this, especially with the balls, because they like to roll as balls do. So if you go back a little bit, you can see Thermal, they were just trying to cycle, but they accidentally like turned their robot in a way where it hit some balls and they rolled out of the warehouse. And those are penalties. So try your best to avoid that. It's very hard to avoid. You have to be really careful when you're driving. And then the other thing to note is once it's out of the warehouse, it's not a penalty if you intake it from there. So like you can see the ones right there. Turtles is going back to the warehouse. They should just grab those and cycle them into the highest level. Because it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster. It's a lot faster to cycle those than to cycle the ones in the warehouse because you just have to drive less distance. So don't do it intentionally, but if you do it accidentally, definitely take advantage of that.
I think we will see ruling on that evolve a little bit throughout the season as we have a couple more competitions. I think one of the things that some of the higher up refs told people is don't punish teams for balls just being balls. Like if something just chooses to roll out randomly, they shouldn't be punished for that. If it clearly wasn't intentional, there's no point to punishing them for it. As long as they're not using it for significant competitive advantage. So
don't do it intentionally.
We'll see ruling on that throughout the season, but just try not to knock stuff out.
Also, just in general, pay attention to the FTC forums. I think if you search like FTC robotics Q&A, it'll probably pop up.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a lot of those rulings that are happening. We've brought those up a few times throughout. And just as the season progresses and we see more different strategies and rare occurrences, we'll get more rulings and you can get a better idea of what penalties actually are.
Yeah, something to expect a ruling on coming up here pretty soon based on the scrimmage was Quacks actually figured out that if you put your robot diagonally against the wall, so it is technically touching the wall, you can get it partially in the what's it called? The little square. I call it the
Oh, the-
depot, but that's not the right.
The warehouse.
Storage unit.
No, storage unit.
Storage
Thank you,
unit.
Davey.
Call it the
yeah.
depot. Skystone terms for the win.
But so it doesn't prohibit you from starting in a scoring area. It just prohibits you specifically from starting in the warehouse or in contact with the ducks. So it was an interesting loophole that Quacks found that we expect will get changed by quals.
No, I don't imagine that will be changed.
You don't think
Well,
that'll be
anyways,
Starting
we can see on the
diagonally has
forum
always been
soon.
legal.
Yeah.
No.
Starting diagonally has always been legal.
changed? No.
But
Talking about-
you get the points for parking.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't be allowed.
Oh, if you're-
There's going to be.
No,
a limit on
I
that.
think that's
I'm
legal.
sorry.
I think that's legal.
Okay, let's move on. Check the
Anyway.
forums.
We'll move on. Check the forums, kids.
Okay, along with knocking Fred out of the house, I think this is probably the most called penalty all day. Controlling 2 Fred at once. So if your robot picked up, instead of just one time, if you picked up 2, some teams are even picking up more like 3 or 4. You get penalized for having multiple game elements in your robot, which is a
I
big.
think we were the only team at the scrim that picked up 4 at once.
Yeah, it happened. It's unfortunate. Generally refs will just, if you intake 2 and you spit it out like right away, usually you'll be fine. But if you have it for, is 5 seconds the time once they start calling penalties?
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to get a penalty immediately, and then it's another penalty after 5 seconds. But they're being pretty lenient with like the immediate penalty,
okay.
because a lot of
So-
active intakes will like kind of bring it into the robot, but they're not really controlling it.
The ruling they're going by with that is if you're making an immediate and obvious intent to not have more than 1 game element in your robot, they're not going to give you a penalty. But if you're just leaving it there, yeah, immediate, minor, another after 5 seconds, a major if you score while holding more than 1. So that should be, just make an obvious effort immediately and you should be good. I probably intook 2 or more like 20 times over the course of that comp. And I think we maybe got 3 or 4 possession penalties.
The
Yeah.
big
But
thing,
that was just because I was being dumb and didn't go to outtake immediately.
the big thing that I think teams should work on is try your best to physically be able to only control 1 freight. Because it makes it so much easier. You don't have to worry about the penalties of controlling 2 or whatever. Have some sort of hard stop or something on your intake that just won't let you take in more than 1, and that'll help a ton.
Yeah, some people are looking at doing sensor feedback as well. So if they have like a distance sensor at the front of their intake, once game element comes through, it'll turn off your intake. So there's some mechanical and software fixes and driver practice. All those things can help eliminate those penalties. But the
Yeah,
big problem too is scoring while you have 2 on your possession. That happened to us a few times. We got like a cube or a ball stuck under our drivetrain, and we didn't notice it until we scored. And having that 1 even just being dragged along the bottom of your drivetrain, that counts as possession. So we got a major for that a few matches actually.
Yeah. There was one time we got 1 stuck under our bot in like the last 20 seconds, and I was just like, okay, no, controller down. I'm not able to score anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's generally the move unless you have a way to get it out from under there.
Yeah.
It wasn't even
It
oh
wasn't
my
from the
gosh.
field. Oh wait, I remember. No, because we lost a duck on one of the. I was field resetting, and we lost a duck on one of the fields, and I was so confused how that happened. Because it's like, where could the duck have gone? I've checked all over the
Wait, is
field.
that where they had to rerun semifinals 2-2?
No, that wasn't. It was way before that. But they apparently Caval stole my duck.
Wow.
So I had to walk like all the way to the other side of the room to get one from the box. So I'm judging you for that. I'm sorry. Taking it personally.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's most of the I think that's all the penalties we have actually. That was all the main
Hey.
stuff we saw at scrimmage. It's a lot of penalties this year. It is really interesting. I've never seen penalty scores this high at comps.
Yeah.
I think we had 560 RP from our 5 qual matches, and we had I think it was 340 in penalties from our 5 qual matches. So we were approaching like half and half on penalties versus actual points.
And honestly, what that tells me is like, okay, obviously having a good robot is important, but if you can be smart and avoid those penalties, because a lot of them are just like you have to notice them and have good drivers basically. But if you can avoid those penalties, then that's going to boost your ranking a ton if other teams are getting those penalties. So, and it'll also help you in like any match really, just like elimination matches, even like just not getting penalties will help you your score a ton. So don't get penalties.
Yeah, Quantum Quacks didn't do great because we had, on average, negative rank points because of the amount of penalties we were scoring. We had like 1 or 2 matches that scored decently, but besides that, we were in the negatives just because of the sheer number of penalties.
The number of matches at that scrim with no penalties, you can probably count on one hand.
So if you can consistently get no penalties, then that tells me that's going to help you a ton and will make you a really attractive pick if you're looking to be picked by an Alliance captain.
4-0. There was a match that was 1-0 at
That's my favorite FTC
at North
score.
California Saratoga qualifier. It was 1-0.
Refs this year. They've caused so many penalties.
I know.
I could be wrong, but I think it was either like the first or the second match before they added the in-game points, like for parking and whatever. It was like -11 to -30 something. Like it looked like for a second no team was gonna.
It was the first match, probably.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Try and avoid penalties if you can, because they're one of the few things where it's just like, even if your robot isn't great, you can hopefully avoid penalties if you just read the game manuals and have good
penalties
drivers.
are why that's a shell of a robot back there. There is nothing on that frame. It's gone. I ripped it apart.
Part of it.
Something I noticed was that with penalties, a lot of like there were very few matches, at least from what I saw, where like a team would get like only like 1 or 2. It looked like especially for my team, looking at the breakdown, we had the match where a lot of stuff went wrong, but we had out of the 3 matches with no penalties, and then 2 with a ton. And I was looking through other qualifiers, and I think that that's probably going to be a recurring theme, is that like when stuff goes wrong, it's going to go really wrong, especially with the hubs and like moving them and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%.
So does anyone have any questions or just like general things they want to bring up?
I know we have a couple names here that weren't even at the scrim, which is interesting. So
Yeah,
I'd
so
be
if you have any
interested to
questions
hear-
about how it went.
yeah, how do you guys think it went?
Or how did it go for your team if you were there? Maybe if you had something that you learned that you think would benefit other people, just throw it in the chat or unmute and talk.
Did we miss any questions in the chat while we were going through slides?
I don't think I think the main ones we had were like about what were the most called penalties and things like that.
Yeah.
Kaval said.
Interestingly.
Oh, sorry, go.
It went interestingly. I'll say that much.
Valid.
Yeah, sorry, I can't have my video.
We didn't have an intake, and we made files.
Kaval, I'd love to know your reaction when Thermal was on top of your robot.
That was my favorite moment ever.
I have a quick thing. This is Coach Wright with Entropic Fluctuations, technically a rookie team, but all members are part of Bots by the Creek. So you guys are talking about defense and stuff like this, where one team goes and collect, the fast recycling team gets their own warehouse and the other bot goes to the other warehouse to collect elements. But if both teams are doing that, how is that more advantageous to be promoting that? Because you're both just 2 robots in the warehouse regardless.
So, Timo, you want to go or do you want me to go?
I want to go. Okay. So, so
And then I'll go next.
so you're right. The thing is, in elimination matches especially, you are not going to be able to control what the other alliance does. So it's really just comes down to you, and you make a decision for your alliance, they make a decision for their alliance. And if you have a bot that is much faster cycling, like the warehouse, if you like physically put your robot in the warehouse and imagine 3 of those, it is very cramped. So even having 2 with 1 trying to play defense, that's still helpful. And just in general, I know this is MTI.
Well, I mean, are you understanding the question though? It's like 2 robots.
So
at any given time, there'll be two robots in a warehouse, does it matter that it's the other one is from the other alliance?
So at
Yeah.
that point, it's more so a matter of skill with defense. When you're trying to play the opposite warehouse, the biggest thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to score while shutting down the other team's scoring attempts. So if they're more effective at that than you, then yes, they're getting an advantage over you. So if both teams decide to do that strategy, then yes, they are in a way taking down each other's scores and just making the entire board lower overall. But that's something that some teams take in elims and just see, can we shut down their scoring attempts more than they can shut down ours?
Yeah, so the rule of thumb in elims is if it slows down your opponent more than it slows down you, then it's worth it to do. So while like, yes, you're technically right that it does just end up being two bots in the field, you have to think about it. If you tell the other robot in your alliance to go to your warehouse as well, then there's three robots which is going to slow you down a lot, and there's only one robot on the other side which will speed them up a lot. So it makes strategical sense. Most likely, it depends on how good your team and all that.
You
can
can
Follow
have
up
a finals
Follow-up
too in your-
question to that, actually. I appreciate that. I understand now what you're saying. The follow-up question I have is, does it not invite the possibility of penalties for interfering with bot play? And a little bit of, in my opinion, as a coach, it's not necessarily gracious professionalism, which I'm not too keen on encouraging my to do that. So what do you think about that?
Yeah,
So-
I'll actually, can I chime in?
Yeah,
real
Philip,
quick,
go
David?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think the encouraging penalties is true. You do have to be a little bit more careful and know what you're doing. But it's not like most of the penalties this year are coming from possessing more than one freight, are coming from knocking your alliance hub. I don't think we had any defense bait related penalties at the scrimmage.
Very few.
We had one. We accidentally moved the other side's alliance hub, but
Don't
that
do
was
that.
that wasn't even us playing defense.
Yeah, don't do that. That's just
Is that an auto fail?
I think
Mm,
the big
but anyway, so on the GP point, that is a good point. That like you could look at that as a not being gracious and professional. And here's kind of my stance, and people will disagree with me on this, but in quals, you're absolutely right. It becomes a GP thing. Once you get to eliminations, the way you are professional is by trying your best to do your best. And so if that means you have to play a little bit of defense, but the thing about GP is you're not going to intentionally go and like break someone's claw.
So
Or
yeah, it's like a prisoner's dilemma, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think
it really
if
is.
you're going to play defense, first of all, if you're going to play defense, read the game manuals thoroughly and talk to the refs, because the refs are very nice people. They do it for a reason. They love FTC, so they will answer any question you have. So if you're not sure if you be entirely above board, don't even make them walk them by the hand into not giving you penalties.
Mhm.
So ask them, make sure you're not doing anything they say is illegal. I think whether or not it's GP, honestly, it comes down to the team. Have that discussion with your team. Don't let it be an individual decision.
I have a
think.
take on GP,
Let the team have. Okay.
and it's an
Let the
interesting
team
one.
make the
So,
decision.
E commented in chat that some states just don't have refs that like defense. And you'll notice that this is something that's pretty common in states that just don't have very strong FRC programs. If you've ever watched an FRC match, the defense played there compared to what we do in FTC is unreal. Robots break, robots flip. A lot of things happen. FTC is just now starting to move towards that defensive side of things. And the important thing about GP is, as Philip was saying, in quals, if you're really just taking down other teams' RP, yeah, that's not GP. You really shouldn't be doing that. In elims, it is doing your best to win matches. But the important thing is, if you break someone else's robot, the GP thing to do is go and help them.
them.
And
Yes.
half of your team to go help.
That's fine.
What
Like,
FRC teams do.
I understand what you're saying here. This is a philosophical debate that maybe we shouldn't have here on what GP really means. But
Mhm.
intentionally, my feeling as maybe I'm just too nice of a person in real life is if your intent is to disrupt to the point of making their other team have a miserable experience, they're not going to want to be your alliance partner down the road. So that's just something there's more to my team and what to think about when doing this. I understand the defensive play, and my rules is treat it like soccer. As long as you're going for the points, everything goes. So I would like to encourage people to think a little bit harder about what it means to go into other people's play areas. Did you guys actually put? Was there any strong alliance partners that actually scored completely from their side of the warehouse? Was that ever attempted by any team?
19376 tried cycling from the opposite warehouse a couple times.
No, I think he's saying
No,
like only from
both
only
from their
one
side.
warehouse.
I don't think we saw that very much. Quacks in 19376 tried that.
When
It did not go great.
I'm
But
sorry, Kate, I couldn't hear you. What was that, Kate?
When people would both be cycling from the same warehouse, one would do shared and one would do alliance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I see
And
that, but that was like the main strategy that worked. It's really difficult to get both teammates cycling on the alliance hub from the same warehouse.
Yeah,
I
I
think
recognize the challenge. It's not an easy. This is a
It's-
very unique challenge this year. I would invite Entropic, if anybody's online, to speak up with any questions. You guys have had probably far little experience with actual field play, so ask your questions. Thank
And
you.
then someone mentioned this and some people acted like they didn't know what it was. So I was going to treat people to this clip. And this is thermal driving up on top of night owls. There you go. You're welcome.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things about defense is you can see, at least from Scrim, a lot of the teams look on it very positively. Like, you can see Caval commenting in chat on Kate accidentally driving up on their robot, and like, no harm, no foul. It was funny, and they agree and they agree with it. So it's just, in general, I think First is a great community to deal with it because we just generally view things as they're there.
Be nice.
It is fun to drive against as well.
It's if you're playing
Oh,
defense,
yeah,
be
Pellet
nice.
Finals 2. Pellet Finals 2, because Finals
I
2
will
was
say,
the most defense like ever.
In MTI, I competed in MTI. The most fun matches were those with defense because they were so stressful, but they were
Also-
like so satisfying. But I think
also-
it really comes down to an individual like philosophical thing, so we should probably move on. But
Yeah.
talk
Yeah,
to your
we-
team, talk to your partners, make a decision as a team.
Don't listen to HUD
go
in
off of what we
chat.
say.
He literally
GP is your own thing. HUD is being satirical in chat. He is
Yeah.
the best defensive
HUD
team in
literally
FTC.
won MTI with defense.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, more
But yeah,
questions.
here's finals 2. Just for the people that weren't there, it is an impressive match to watch.
It's on Thermal's YouTube too.
Yeah,
It is
quite a few videos up on YouTube if you guys want to see that.
and Quacks will be posting one soon too that has my better camera footage, personally, in my opinion. No
Wait,
shade.
I thought this was your camera footage for some reason. What?
No,
this
is
right
not.
here is my camera footage.
Okay, yeah.
The one on Thermal YouTube isn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, any other
Mine is
questions?
different.
Yeah. What
Hey, look,
other?
all 4 robots in one corner of the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
no. Oh, no. HUD, care to comment on your pushing match with primitive data?
No.
Okay, understandable.
Anyways, does anyone have any other questions?
Okay, Caval, we want to answer this first and for all. Did 5309's claw break in finals 1, or was that like completely separate? Because we're not sure what happened. We couldn't find anything in match footage.
No,
I'm pretty sure it
I
is final
did.
one.
It was
You
final.
did
You want me
find
to
it?
pull it
Yeah.
up? You want me to pull it up? I can pull it up. Here,
We
hold
just
up.
looked at each other at the beginning of finals 2, and we were like, wait, didn't they have a claw before? Because we didn't realize anything happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't be toxic. Be nice
Yeah,
to
don't-
people, no matter what.
Help people fix it. If you notice it and you realize that you did it, just make sure that all 4 teams are able to play to the best of their ability on the field, because that's what matters.
And something important that we do see here, except for me trying to dance to avoid Sam being in my way. Something important that we do see is when Thermal is pushing plan B, they're being very careful to push from the non-claw side. So they try as hard as they can not to break the claw. And doing things like that is obviously better. This is me.
That is an awkward shared hub position.
That is, yeah.
The shared hub is very awkward.
Yeah,
It's
I want to
very-
see what people do in quals now that we
Our old robot was very incapable of doing shared.
yeah.
Wait, you had 3,000 ping for this? Okay,
How reliable is the
what?
driver's hub? No, the driver hub, we've done less extensive testing than other people, so I'll be quiet soon. We've had issues with battery, but it hasn't been that inconsistent for us.
Update it heavily, run the battery all the way down, then all the way back up before every comp. Make sure that the battery is taped in the proper way that Rev says according to their guides, because apparently you have to put tape inside the battery casing to make it work properly. And just don't shake it around too much, because it's
My personal thing
Be
with the
careful.
driver hub is with your driver station, you are allowed to have an external battery pack. I would recommend Quacks personally, we pull the battery out of ours. Well, that's not entirely true. We put a different battery in that's more reliable. But then for the most part, we're running purely off of the auxiliary power.
yeah. You can notice, actually, I don't know if you can see it on our driver station, but we have like a massive 12,000 milliamp hour battery pack on our driver station.
Yeah. We didn't
How
do
many
any
rookie
external
teams?
batteries. We just made sure that it was plugged in between every match, like whenever we weren't using it, and we were fine.
Mhm.
The battery
I
is the
think-
only issue, really. I feel like connection has been good, and it's nice. It's nice to not have to deal with the USB hub thing.
How many rookie teams?
I
is
think
the
it was
scrimmage?
2 or 3.
We are
and
not
2 or
going to count 19376 as a rookie
Yeah,
team.
so
unfortunately.
Thermal is technically a rookie team, but they have a lot of they are not are technically a rookie team. All their members have experience, so we don't count them.
Space
So I think-
Invaders was a full rookie team, 19921. I think that was. I
Yeah.
don't think there were any others.
I think
Or-
that
I brought this up because I wasn't sure if you guys were fully aware just how many rookie teams there are this year.
Yeah.
From what
There's
the
a lot.
discussions I've seen, so I'm wondering, will your strategies change with a higher percentage of rookies as alliance partners, especially in the eliminations?
I don't think it really will.
Eliminations won't change much. Qualifiers do definitely change. a
Sorry,
lot when you have a
qualifiers.
lot
I
of
meant
rookies.
qualifiers. Yeah.
Yeah. When you have a lot of rookies, you have to work with them closely and make sure that you're coordinating autos, helping them out if they're having issues getting their autos to work. You want to make sure that your alliance partners perform to the best of their ability. And generally, a lot of teams will have experience to just hand off to them and make sure that they're all prepped for the match. So
also just in general help people, like even if
Yeah.
you aren't in matches with them.
Here's a
Because,
big
like,
thing.
It's kind of scary going to a competition for the first time, especially if your whole team is rookies. So if you notice rookie teams, go be nice to them and compliment their robot and ask them
Yeah,
questions
Space
and help
Invaders
them
was
with
the only
whatever they
rookie.
need.
Would the rookie aspect change the defensive play because robots tend not to be as robust?
defense
I'm-
and quals shouldn't really be played.
don't do
If a
defense
rookie
and quals,
does
it's
make
so
it to
cringe.
elims, teams will generally change their play differently to make sure that they're not breaking anything.
If it
Yeah.
seems like a robot's about to break, people are not going, or people shouldn't go out of their way to try and break it.
I don't think
Um,
any team
I don't think
in
anyone
NC
will,
that plays
hopefully.
defense will go out of their way to push a robot.
Yeah.
that is.
So
A lot
that
of
being
stuff's
said, make your
very,
robot.
a lot of it's going to be like very heavily dependent on the match and like which teams you have, what the strategies. Because like some teams, it's going to be difficult to have both in the warehouse. Sometimes you have like one doing alliance, one doing shared. Like I don't know. Some of the stuff we saw at the scrim, we're not going to see at scrim at quals. Just I don't know. It just also dependent on like what the situation is and what the teams are.
Mhm.
Just because
I
we
think-
saw it in one match doesn't mean it's going to be every single qual match or anything like that.
Also recognize that like half the teams in the finals by finals 2 physically could not score during teleop other
Yeah.
than endgame. So if you don't if you aren't able to score, then you're going to see more defense because I think Kaval said it in chat, like that's all you can really do. I
think the
I
rookies
agree though.
actually might have played
Defense in
worse
quals is
defense during
cringe.
games.
Defense in quals, just like why? Like it doesn't benefit
19-9-21
anyone.
did some insane defense in elims.
19-21 did a good job. They're impressive for rookies.
I
all
think,
the videos
yeah,
on
as a
YouTube,
rookie
all
team,
of
they actually
them,
came in planning to play defense.
yeah.
From
From
what I heard.
Chris, from Night Owls, or all the videos on YouTube. All the videos that have thermal equilibrium are on their YouTube channel. I don't think Philip might post some videos, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
gonna
think all
post-
the other videos are.
The Quacks ones will go up by the end of the week.
Yeah, they didn't
Yeah.
stream this qual, so all the teams are all the videos that are up there were just recorded by the teams themselves. Thermal put up most of our matches, but that's it.
Yeah,
Right?
if you have videos of matches and you put them up on YouTube, drop a link in the NCFTC Discord. And I think at some point Quacks is planning on making a playlist that has all of the matches in it, just because that way you can go through and watch them all. Anytime, Tim.
Yep.
Um,
If you have any other questions, let us know, by the way.
yeah,
Like, even after this.
moving the team scoring element being a major, good thing to point out.
Yeah.
Something else that I was going to talk about with
That's
rookies.
not a penalty. That's not a penalty.
Yeah, it's not.
As long as you don't fully block it, you are not inciting a penalty. So if you put their TSE underneath your robot, that's a penalty. They can't reach it. But if you just push it to the exact opposite corner of the field from them by chance,
That's
it's
getting
not a penalty.
toxic.
It's kind of toxic, but it's not a penalty
toxic.
in that specific case.
I think also the important thing to note about defense, you are able to block specific areas of the field, but you cannot like shadow a team or stop all movement, all access to a thing. So if like a team drives this way and you follow them that way to continue to block them, that's a penalty. But if you just sit somewhere that the team wants to go,
Yeah.
then that's
If
fine.
a team uses Enigma Riddler's tape measure turret for capping, fully expect the tape measures that capstones are getting pushed to the exact opposite side of the field.
Also, if you haven't seen Enigma Riddler's capstone, I am going to quickly find a link and post it because it's really
they
cool.
posted a video.
Yeah, I'm fine. I will post a link in
They posted the CAD.
and it's very cool. You should look at it if you're thinking about capping.
Kaval, there's a better video as to like how it works. It's a
I will
two-axis
find-
turret with turret with the tape measure extension.
Okay, I just dropped a link in chat. You guys can go.
They flat
watch
out
that
publicized
later.
the CAD.
It's very cool. Would recommend if you were looking into capping.
Yeah, Quacks is definitely not working on one. What?
None of us are working on that.
No one
None of
knows.
us are.
Yeah, it's not like I think like most of the teams here are working on some form of that. The CAD link's in the description of the YouTube.
I wanted to say a couple things, especially for rookie teams and teams that haven't done this in a while. Inspection is a big thing. You want to make sure you go through your inspection checklist beforehand. Quacks will be releasing a taking your robot through inspection video again this year. But take your robot through inspection, make sure it's all good. Make sure you have the power switch warning and the robot moves on initialization warning stickers. Quacks brings like 2 spare sheets of those just because inevitably everyone forgets one.
And make sure you're within sizing constraints. There's some drama going on in Michigan right now because the winning alliance captain was actually over 18 inches in a direction.
Don't do
So yeah,
Yeah.
please
We
make
hate drama here. Don't do that. If it's gonna cause drama, don't do it, guys.
it's actually the team in the video that was yeah.
Philip, do you have anything else you want to add? Or is that your wrap up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, inspection, think about it, and then also when you're waiting for matches scheduled to release, if you are mechanical and you were just sitting around, look up at the thing and see if, oh, this team hasn't passed inspection yet, and see if you can go help.
Yeah.
I would.
Oh, and then also, I don't think we harped on this enough. Loctite every single screw on your robot that is possible to reach. Like,
After
I took my robot apart the day after that scrim, and I found I could move the expansion hub about 2 inches, one of our mechanisms flat out fell apart instantaneously. We had a motor screw a couple millimeters away from freezing up our entire drivetrain. Half of our intake screws were off. Like, barriers make this game so painful. Buy like 5 bottles of this stuff.
Also, build your full robot, then Loctite it, because it's a pain to get
What?
out. So be sure you
But
have
anyway,
it built before you start.
Anything that's final,
anyways,
Loctite it.
if you have any more questions, let us know or ask in the NCFTC Discord. If you ask in the NCFTC Discord, odds are one of us will respond to you in minutes, but you can also DM us if you have
30
any extra
seconds, I'll give
questions.
you my personal guarantee.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 24/7 guarantee coverage now. we're missing a tiny sliver of time between 4:30 and 6:30 a.m.
No, Davey's
Yeah,
awake
that.
then. Davey's awake then.
Sometimes
Um,
he's asleep.
Okay.
It depends.
so
But anyway, it
anyways.
doesn't matter. The final closing note is
Thank you for coming.
Scrimmage
you
was
for
awesome.
coming.
Thank you for coming.
I'm looking
GP
forward
is
to
See you
awesome.
on Enon. See you
Yeah.
on Enon on the 8th.
Elon
See you at
Scrim,
Scrim.
Greensboro Qual.
Yep. We'll
That's
see you.
meta.
I think all of our teams are going to no,
Philip is not.
Quacks is going to Rollsville.
Yeah.
Orange. If you're coming into
19376,
Greensboro, say hi to us. If you're coming to Elon or Greensboro, say hi to us at competition. We'll be like, oh my goodness, I met you on the internet. Anyways, have fun, build good robots, ask
luck,
us
everyone.
questions.
Good luck.
Bye. See you in like a month.